Well, gosh, I think we've been blown away today. Benny, do you want to just summarise some of your thoughts, reflections, insights from 5 brilliant panels?
It's almost impossible, Hannah. I've listened intently to everybody, and there were some real threads I think coming through the panels of adults that we had. And I think one of the things that came through really strongly for early careers teachers is this idea that you're not alone, and that you're not going through this process by yourself. So, in navigating how to become the teacher that you want to be with the identity that you have, there are so many ways of connecting with people, and almost everyone said the same thing, that you can't just be an island, you have to reach out. And that's true of just teaching, but it's true certainly in terms of diversity, equity and inclusion work. So that for me was one of the most powerful messages of the day for our teachers joining the profession, that the power of networks will get you where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like voice and storytelling and giving people the opportunity to have voice, but then whose voices are we amplifying and whose voices are we listening to was also a thread that came up for me. And then I think the second thread was around empowerment and sort of like having agency or taking agency. And I think that youth panel really summarized it for me about like, don't wait for opportunities to come to you, create the space, create the conversations, disrupt where you are and find a way to actually be the change as opposed to wait for the change to come to you. Do you want to add anything to that, Benny?
Well, yeah, certainly. And I often think about what our sphere of influence is, as an educational professional, and it changes as you go throughout your career. And my experience as someone who started teaching 18 years ago was that feeling of like not having agency and being this kind of bit part player in a much bigger machine. And I'm really pleased to see actually that people coming into the profession now have a greater sense of agency through perhaps the social media conversations, and are able to disrupt those spaces in a way that probably we didn't think about 18, 20 years ago, and probably feel more comfortable calling people in around issues around diversity, equity and inclusion. And there are still fears, there are still really legitimate fears around doing that. But remembering what your sphere of influence is, making those small changes, bringing in those ideas as somebody who's fresh to the profession is invaluable to a school, because it's a constantly shifting institution.
Yeah, and just to speak to that word fear, because I think Charlotte's talk really made me think about authenticity and who has permission to be authentic. And I think that's something I've reflected on a lot in my 20 years in education about the privilege I've had to be myself in every role I've had. And I know we've talked about this at length, Benny, as well. But if we think about the early career teachers listening, but also their mentors, their tutors, their lecturers, their potential prospective employers, we need to be less subjective in what we think about the opportunity to be authentic, because we assume quite often our schools are safe enough, but quite often they aren't. And I think that's something I'm still kind of grappling with myself. So we're going to invite everyone who's been joining us today to make a My Diverse Ed pledge. We do this after every event. We don't want these events to be passive. We want them to be active. We want intention to move into action. So Benny, what is your My Diverse Ed pledge after today?
I think I'm realizing that I'm in quite a privileged position in having kind of quite a large network on Twitter. And for me, my Diverse Ed pledge is to ensure that I am amplifying the voices of those networks, that can provide safe spaces for early career teachers. So, making sure that there are lots of blog posts through Diverse Ed, through myself, to show that, where some of these voices are, to make it really visible.
And I mean, one of my ongoing My Diverse Ed pledges is about sharing the mic. And I know we've talked about having a young person's voice at every event and a governor at every event. But I want to speak directly to a comment from Lalo Emotu in the chat today about the FE voice. Like, there's more educators in FE than on in the whole school system put together. And I think that's something that I need to make sure that we're committing to, that we have FE voice at Diverse Ed events as well, to make sure we're not missing out a part of the sector where this work needs to be done as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our 4th event. We very much hope that next year's early career teacher event might be held in real time, face to face, so we could actually hug each other. But thank you for joining us. Go and enjoy what's left of your wet and windy Saturday, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event in June. Take care.